Racism in South Korea. Was it really that bad? If you search for racism on YouTube, racism in Korea automatically appears as a related search term. How did my country, Korea, become like this? So today, we're going to talk about racism in South Korea and what are the characteristics of racism in Korea and why it's gotten worse. Real Korea knowledge. Let's get started. First of all, there are two things that make Korea's racism unique. First, it's based on GDP per capita. Depending on whether the country is better off or worse off than Korea, the degree of racism varies. Therefore, we can say Korean-style racism also based on money. For example, people from North America or Western Europe, which have a higher GDP per capita than Korea, they seem to have a relatively positive perception in Korea. On the other hand, there is a tendency of severe racism towards Southeast Asians, Africans, and Chinese who have a lower GDP per capita than Korea. The exception is racism against the Japanese. This is not due to economic reasons, but to historical reasons. Japanese colonization to Korea. The second characteristic of Korean racism is racism based on appearance. Recently, Vivian Eungwen, a famous Vietnamese influencer, said racism in Korea. When a Vietnamese idol debuts in Korea, people say, "Wow, she looks like a Korean." It basically means you're beautiful because you look like us, and it makes me really angry. In this way, racism in Korea is based on the external appearance of foreigners, such as their skin color or physical appearance. So, to summarize, Korean-style racism is racism based on GDP per capita and appearance. So, why is racism so prevalent in Korea? I found 3 reasons. Let's explore them together, shall we? First, the number of foreigners in South Korea has increased dramatically, but the perception of the people has not kept up. Last year, 2022, there were a total of 2.26 million foreigners living in South Korea. This was the largest number ever. Foreigners now make up 4.4% of South Korea's population of 50 million. However, from 1948, when the government of South Korea was established, until 1990, there were only 20,000 foreigners living in South Korea. Even in 1990, the population of South Korea was 43 million. So there were really no foreigners as a percentage of the population. But after the 1990s, the number of foreigners in South Korea grew very quickly. Partly because Korea became more open, and partly because economic growth. So a lot of low-wage laborers from other countries came in. So the foreign population, which was 20,000 in 1990, more than doubled in 5 years to 55,000 in 1995. Now in 2022, it's 2.26 million. This means that the foreign population has increased 110 times in 30 years. However, despite all these foreigners coming to South Korea, the problem of racism against foreigners has not improved at all. For example, United States enacted the world's first anti-discrimination law in 1964. South Korea still has no anti-discrimination laws as of 2023. This means that there is no law to prevent racism against foreigners. Recently, however, there have been efforts to create an anti-discrimination law in Korea, but there is still no word on when it will be enacted. Second, Korea's collectivist culture. Collectivism is the idea of prioritizing the group over the individual, right? Usually, collectivism is more common in the East than in the West. However, Korea is one of the most collectivistic countries in the East. If you look at the map, the more green it is, the more collectivist it is. Korea, it's very green, it's almost grass. But often, this intense collectivist culture in Korea is also used to marginalize other groups, especially foreigners. However, this collectivist culture in Korea, not only among foreigners, but also in rural areas too. Do you know why the city dwellers in Korea not return to the countryside? One of the reasons is the collectivist culture of the countryside. So this high level of collectivism in Korea may have led to racism against foreigners too. Finally, racism due to South Korea's rapid economic growth. Starting in the 1960s, South Korea experienced full-scale economic growth. In 1974, our GDP was $19.54 billion, ranking us 13th in the world. Above us were countries like Venezuela, Indonesia, and Nigeria. But in 50 years, we've had very rapid economic growth. Our GDP has grown 85 times. By 2021, we were ranked 10 in GDP. With such rapid economic growth, we have become a culture that is used to competing with other countries rather than cooperating with them. foreigners were perceived as something to compete with, not something to live with. So because of this reason, racism has gotten stronger. To summarize, racism has increased in South Korea because the number of foreigners grew too fast without anti-discrimination law, because of a highly collectivistic culture, and because of the rapid economic growth. This is what we can conclude together. But I think Korea will change in the future. There will be institutional change like anti-discrimination laws, and especially the younger generation is used to having a relationship with foreigners, so I think the issue of racism will fade away soon. And I think we have a tendency to feel uncomfortable talking to other people, including foreigners. So you might feel a little bit unfriendly in here, but if you ask them for directions on the street, they'll give you very good directions. What do you think about racism in Korea? I hope that my country can improve in this area in the future. So that's all about racism in South Korea. If you're curious about South Korea history of nuclear weapons program, click here. Thank you, and please subscribe and hit the like button. Have a nice day.